Hi everybody, welcome back to Guitar in the Real World. It's been a couple of weeks since I've put anything new up, but I've got a great interview with Lewis Turner today. Lewis is a professional guitarist who does the usual theatres and functions and teaching. You might have also seen him on the Guitar Interactive online magazine. He was due to be doing the local hero show at the Old Vic, which of course is not happening at the moment due to coronavirus. But we had a great discussion about the process that he went through, emulating Mark Knopfler's sound and getting prepared to audition for the gig. And also we talked a lot about his experiences working at Knopfler's British Grove Studios in London to record some tracks for the upcoming show. So I hope you enjoy this. We had a really good discussion about some really interesting stuff. Okay, cheers guys. Anyway, I suppose we could just like dive straight into this whole thing of how it came about that you got the local hero gig in the first place.
Yeah, so I got contacted by a fixer, and he put me forward basically, and right. I think there was 9 other guitarists that he put forward for an audition, which seems to be more of a regular thing these days for shows. Yeah, audition for shows.
Well, I don't get asked to audition for anything these days.
I think this is only my second one, so. It's a weird thing, isn't it?
So was that like a normal theatre fixer though? It wasn't sort of
yeah.
Okay.
The fixer that you and I know, yeah. And so yeah, he sent me. He said he sent me through the parts. So there was 2 songs to record.
Yeah.
One of them was the local hero theme, and the other one was called Rocks and Water, which I hadn't heard before actually.
And is that the one that you recently put up on Facebook?
I put both up on there, yeah. The Rocks and Water one is the slower one.
Yeah.
And the Going Home theme is the one that everybody knows.
Everybody knows, yeah.
Yeah. So he sent through the 2 scores, and it was a case of record it, and then Mark himself is going to choose, who does it.
Yeah, sure.
Mark and Guy Fletcher. So Guy Fletcher's been his keyboard player since the Dire Straits days.
Right. Okay.
So they were going to sit down and decide who got the gig, basically. And I knew it was a two guitar chair.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure whether they were going to send us like acoustic parts or mandolin parts or whatever. But luckily for me, they sent the electric lead guitar parts.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if the other guy got the same parts. I'm guessing so. I'm guessing I guess all the guys got sent the same stuff to record.
Yeah.
And it was just an audio recording, but I decided to make it video as well, just to get extra. I don't know. I thought it might go in my favour or whatever. Or they might not.
You've got the right hand technique just right,
Well, that's the thing. So I absolutely went to town on this. I have to be honest, because Mark Knopfler was probably one of the reasons that I started playing guitar.
Yeah, sure.
And so when this opportunity came up, I was like, these are quite rare, aren't they, within the industry that we work in? These things where you actually, and this sounds a bit, but we actually really want to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Without sounding, disrespectful to any other gigs or anything, but this was like, I really want to do this. Yeah. And I knew I was in with a fighting chance because I'd studied Knopfler's playing so much over the years, and I have memories of being a teenager or younger and trying to work out his stuff off cassette players and stuff before I really knew what the names of stuff, scales and chords and stuff like that were on.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
So just trying to figure out how he did it. And actually, when I first started playing guitar, I'd never used a pick.
Same here, actually. I was the same.
Yeah, I don't know did you go down the classical route first, though? Is that how you ended up with that?
No, I sort of came in from the sort of Knopfler, Eric Clapton sort of end of things initially, but I was quite heavily influenced by sort of soul, funk, R&B, and also New York jazz fusion, smooth jazz, that side of things. So I was really into the whole sort of Hiram Bullock and Eric Gale and those sort of players as well. So it was very much a rhythm section thing for me.
but first actually. So when I first got into playing guitar, I think the first sort of lead guitar playing I really started to gravitate towards was probably Mark Knopfler, actually.
Yeah.
Because I started playing in '87, so I was already familiar with Dire Straits because they were very big at the time.
Yeah.
And I went to my first guitar lesson, and my guitar teacher just sort of didn't try and make me do anything. I just said I wanted to play with my fingers, and we talked about Knopfler a bit. But I never played with his technique. I had a really weird technique that was more like a pick technique, but it had to be changed.
That thing where you like used your back of your now as a pick sort of thing.
But I didn't get rid of that until I was 18. I mean, I had my technique was non-existent. I learned classical in the interim. So I learned classical sort of stuff, but I was never much cop at that because I wasn't really into it. I was never really into guitar. I was more into music and composing and arranging and stuff like. I got more serious about playing when I went to college, actually. So that's where I did all my homework. But anyway, we digress. That's so that's you obviously you had a big sort of a deep understanding of Knopfler's playing just from it being like a massive influence to you right at the beginning. So.
Yeah, totally. And I remember like wearing out the VHS recording of Alchemy.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know if that age you actually study someone's playing. You just absorb it, don't you?
You do, yeah.
You just take on board and you just think, oh, that's what you do, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole right hand thing, I just picked up from watching him do it, and it wasn't until much later that I gravitated towards a pick. Yeah. But the other thing was that Knopfler never went away. So even up to my age now, is someone I always still listen to and admire and learn bits from and stuff like that. So he's been a continuous, where some players tend to come and go throughout your life.
Yeah.
He's continuous.
Yeah. I mean, he's not somebody who I've really studied closely in recent times, but I always sort of keep half an ear to the ground about what he's up to. Even if I just hear a track on the radio, I'm thinking, he plays a note and you think, oh, I know who that is. And then you just start. Yeah. And often what he tends to play, especially his more recent stuff, he tends to, everything kind of about the song really, isn't it? More so than it ever was. And so his playing is very kind of minimalistic, but everything he plays always has a certain touch to it that is unmistakably him. So if you're going in to do a gig where you're supposed to be emulating his style, you're not just emulating the notes. There's so many other factors that you have to consider, aren't there?
Totally. That was so the brief really for getting this gig was to obviously learn and record the 2 parts, but the only stipulation was to get the tone and vibrato right, which actually, if you listen to Knopfler, is actually quite a big thing. Those 2 things, quite a massive subject right there already.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the vibrato, because when I was watching your video that you put up the other day, I took note of that vibrato, and I just thought, I hadn't consciously thought of it before.
Yeah.
But then I saw the way you were using the vibrato on some of those notes, and I thought, that's quite a unique vibrato, actually.
Yeah. I've got a guitar here. So actually, and he does a lot of the weird things that, where he does vibrato on chords.
Right, yeah.
That classic thing.
Yes, absolutely.
But the thing, you don't really hear it on the recording. No. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't stand out like someone's like, like B.B. King's vibrato or the other end of the spectrum, something like Yngwie. It doesn't really cut through, but it's there. And if you isolate and really listen to it, you can hear that kind of warble effect that he's got on his chordal work. Yeah. And also his single note vibrato is quite shallow and very specific as well.
Yeah, sure.
That was. I watched back some of those videos that I put up the other day, and I'm still not. It's never going to be Knopfler, obviously, because it's Knopfler. But that's quite tough. So that was the playing side of it, and I say luckily I'd studied like his right hand stuff and all those kind of things in the past, so I kind of had a good idea about that. But the thing that I struggled with the most was the tone replication, as in the gear that he used.
Right. Okay.
So on the sheet music we got sent, it stipulated a Gibson Les Paul for both recordings.
Okay.
And I'm sure older Dire Straits fans and Mark Knopfler fans will be familiar with that red Strat and the kind of out of phase sound.
Yeah.
And they also sent through, obviously, audio recordings of him playing those 2 tracks. And when I listened to Local Hero, I was like, that's a Strat. That sounds just like a Strat on like...
Was that from the actual original recording?
No, it wasn't. It's the ones he'd been doing lately for the show.
Right.
It's kind of got a bit more of a Celtic vibe to it. And I was like, that's a Strat, man. It's definitely a Strat. It was doing my head in because it said Gibson. I was thinking it must be a misprint on the sheet music. And I was like, why are they stipulating a Gibson, a Les Paul? Whereas on the other track, I could hear that it definitely was a Les Paul because it had that kind of Brothers in Arms sound. And that wasn't too hard to replicate. And actually, I used, if you want to get into this now, I actually used my Helix for the recordings. And luckily, on one of the forums, someone had put up a Brothers in Arms patch.
Right, okay.
So I was like, but I was like a bit dubious. If you download a lot of these things, then they are a bit hit and miss, can't they?
Yeah.
But I downloaded this thing. I thought I'll give it a go, and it was pretty much, when I plugged in the Les Paul into it, I was like, man, that's pretty much there.
Yeah. Okay.
So I need to find that guy and thank him, really.
Yeah.
So I just EQ'd it a little bit, and it was a bit too gainy for that song, but essentially that was there. So I was like, okay, that's that one ticked off. But it was the Local Hero one, those clean chords at the start. I was like, that's a Strat. That's definitely a Strat to my ears. Then, funnily enough, within that week, me and my brother went to see him at the O2.
Right.
He was touring his latest solo album. We went and saw him at the O2, and they played that song. And what guitar did he play it on? He played it on a Les Paul. And it sounded like a Strat, even at the stadium. I was like,
okay. Right.
I was like, oh no, I was like, they're right on the.
Yeah.
Absolutely, of course they're right. Knopfler's written. I was like, oh, damn
well, it's funny because that his whole sort of Les Paul tone thing from Brothers in Arms and that era. It's as much a part of his arsenal now as the Strat, actually. Yeah. By the time Brothers in Arms came along, Dire Straits had only been famous for about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And so, all 35 years later, we go, oh, yeah, it's always a Strat. Well, it's not. Yeah, but it's easy to get locked into that kind of mindset, isn't it? You get locked into where you were when you first discovered it.
Yeah. And I so wish it had been a Strat, man, because I could have picked up that one there, and I could have plugged it into one of my clean Fenders.
Yeah.
And that would have been it.
Yeah.
Pretty much done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, we saw this concert, and you're right, because during that concert, his main guitar was actually his Les Paul.
Right.
Throughout that whole gig, going through a Kemper. So he was using the Les Paul throughout that, even for the older songs like Once Upon a Time in the West and stuff like that. So for whatever reason, he's been using a Les Paul more so.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a real case of going back to like the drawing board, and especially as I was going to do a video, and they stipulated a Les Paul, I was definitely going to have to play a Les Paul and try and get this sound right.
Got an overlay of a Les Paul on.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, damn it. And so that literally took, like, learning the notes wasn't the problem.
Yeah, sure.
Playing the thing wasn't a problem. But I only had I think they gave us like a week and a half to prepare it, record it, and send it. But most of my time was spent getting that damn clean tone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a total nightmare. And I'm sure there are guys that you and I know that could listen to a track and tell you exactly what amp they're using, what effects they're using, and stuff like that. And I've never been particularly great at that.
No, nor have I.
I can guess a guitar, but clearly I can't because I got that one wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm only getting better at it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know about gear at all until I was like in my mid-30s, and even then I was only sort of. It was always like, well, I sort of know what works for me, and well, yeah. I mean, that's
when it works for you, it's okay, isn't it? But when you're trying to replicate someone else.
Well, I think this is the thing that's quite interesting about professional work, is that and I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately, as just as a general thing that goes around my head. That often I think it seems to be, I don't know, maybe I'm imagining this because I don't have a different perspective on it, but being a professional in this era, I feel like guitarists in particular are often expected to replicate somebody else's sound, kind of, or a certain type of sound all the time. Now, if you go back into the golden era of session recording, person A would get hired to sound like person A. Person B would get hired. So, you know, if you think about like somebody like Lukather, he was hired to be Lukather. You know, I mentioned Hiram Bullock earlier. He was hired to sound like Hiram Bullock. He wasn't hired to sound like B.B. King or whatever, you know. And I know there are some genre things to consider, but you know, if you think about Lukather, he played on a lot of different genres, and he was still hired to sound like Lukather, and he still sounds like him. And I'm sure he never walked into the studio, and the producer didn't say to him, "Hey man, can you sound like Jay Graydon?"
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. It's a funny thing.
No, and I think actually in our business now, it's almost to your detriment if you have a unique sound, isn't it?
Yeah,
it can really go against you.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really experienced it. Let's say in an obvious, direct way, but yeah. I know I have a sound that I generate, as we all do when I play, and whether I'm playing on a Strat or a 335, you know, there's a certain attack that I have, which may or may not be what people are wanting to / expecting to hear. And it's hard to know whether, you know, what kind of effect that has on the listener or the person who's in charge or the person who's sort of making the artistic or editorial decisions about, you know, what the final I mean, I just remember doing my one and only West End show, which was Grease all those years ago, and being sort of given not a hard time, but being grilled a bit too hard about my sounds. And, you know, this is in the early days of DIing still. You know, I was using a Vox Tone Lab, which actually, I think, you know, they were pretty good for what they were. But I'd only bought the Tone Lab sort of a number of weeks before even going into rehearsals. And they sent me the pad like the day before the rehearsal. So I did my programming really quickly. Yeah. And in rehearsals, I was plugging that into Combo just to sort of, in that horrible, what's that place in Islington, that room that's like a dance studio, in that church or whatever, I can't remember what it's called now.
Yes, I know.
But anyway, the acoustics of the room were really detrimental, and then we went into the theatre, and I was plugging DI'd and straight into in-ears which they provided, which were actually really not very flat in their response at all. So I was hearing like a big mid hump, but they were hearing all this extreme high end and stuff which I couldn't hear, and it was like it was really tough just getting the sound together, because you know, it's like, it doesn't sound right. Have you tried, what about using this piece of gear? It's like, what do you mean? Why are you talking about this piece of gear? What decade are you talking, you know? And it was it was a really tough period to essentially do what was a simple show that we've all done as Amdrams a million times. We all know the songs, and I was getting all this flack because my sound wasn't right. It's like, what do you want? I mean, knowing that they didn't want it to sound authentically 50s, but then so they want it to sound rocky, and then you get told that your sound is not right for that. It's just like, well, you don't want that and you don't want that, but you don't tell me exactly what you want. And it's even if I'd been left to my own devices, I'd have managed to cultivate the sounds and then let them say, can you tweak them?
Yeah. I always find like band calls the most stressful thing. Not because they're playing the right notes and stuff, because they're getting the sounds. Yeah. You know, if you've had it before where you turn up and you've never seen the pad before, and they're like, here's the pad. So you're trying to read the music, and then they want this sound for it. And it's like, here we go from the top. You're like, whoa, you're going to have to give me a second here to
yeah.
this tone. And then you have blinking like keyboard players that have their own programmer. Yeah. It's programming the sounds around. Yeah. It's better to do everything. It's a bit of a nightmare. So that's always stressed me out slightly. I've never been great at that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in many sort of band calls like that because of, you know, I haven't had many shows that have been my my chair, but yeah, every time it's an extra layer of pressure that means
totally.
that you can't just sit down and concentrate on the notes.
And I think you're judged more on your sound as well.
Yeah, I think
everyone's expecting like someone to hit a wrong note every now and then. But if you've got a wrong sound, it's like, that guy doesn't sound great.
Yeah. I mean, and I think in that period where we were between still using amps and using Kempers and Axe effects, it was harder to get the right tone, or get a tone that was pleasing to the ear. It was possible, but you needed to spend more time really playing around with it. And if you were not given the time, it was really hard to come up with what people were expecting to hear. Yeah,
totally. So going back to getting this clean sound with the Les Paul, I searched a lot of forums about gear that he used to use, but then I'm thinking, well, that's old school stuff. That's not what he's profiling now on his Kemper or whatever. So I just literally started from scratch with the Helix, middle pickup on the Gibson, or out of phase, sorry, in between, and I just started with fine. I've got the patch here actually. I started with a clean amp, just a Fender clean amp, and then slowly kind of layered up different things from there. It ended up being quite a few things actually. So I got transistor tape delay on there, a plate reverb, and an EQ setting as well, and LA Studio compression. Right. And that was about the closest I could get, and I still wasn't 100% happy with it. But I was literally spending, coming in from working on the show in the evening, sitting down with I haven't got a studio at home, my studio's somewhere else, but sitting with the Helix in the living room with headphones in, just tinkering with the sound. And when your ears are tight, that's probably the worst thing you can do. And then go back to it the next day, it's like, oh God, it sounds worse.
How much top end have I put into that sound?
Sounds even worse. It's like, it's absolutely doing my head in. So it came to a point where I was like, this is just going to have to be what it is. And luckily it paid off.
Yeah. So how did it feel when you were told you got the gig?
After all that. It's amazing, man. It's amazing. Over the moon. And there's another whole story that goes with that I can go into if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
But I should just say as well, going back to the tone thing, obviously, like we said, a lot of it's in his hands. And you'll know this as well. So despite having the notes in front of you, it doesn't really tell you where he would have played that on the neck. So you've got a D voicing written out. It's like, well, where is that played or whatever? So I spent a long time really listening to the recording that they sent. And you can hear a note played on the B string compared to a note played on the G string. There's a definite difference there, isn't there?
Yeah.
You can hear that. So I spent ages figuring out where he'd actually played stuff on the neck and trying to find more recent footage of him playing these things live. So I spent equally as long doing that. So a lot of work went into those two audition pieces. Got the call, and that was wicked.
So after that, you went into the studio to do something? What was that all about?
The fixer then called me a couple of days later, and he's like, they want you to go and record a song for the show, the opening number. I was like, okay. And when he said they, I didn't think he meant like Mark. I just thought the producers of the show would want me to. But no, it was at Mark's studio, British Grove Studios. I don't know if you've done anything there.
No.
And it was with Mark and Guy Fletcher, Ian Thomas on kit, and a few others. A few other guys that he used in his band. I didn't get much sleep the night before.
I can imagine. I don't sleep before gigs that have got half that amount of pressure. I get nervous.
Like, you're going to record this opening number for the show. It's like, okay, do you get to hear it or see anything before? It's like, no, they haven't got anything yet, but it'll be there on the day. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking maybe he won't, Mark won't be there until a bit later on or something. Give me a chance to actually get the stuff under my fingers first, and then maybe he'd come in and kind of listen or whatever.
Yeah.
This is mad, actually, recording the story. I never thought that this would ever happen. But yeah, so I turn up at his studio, and he's there. He's there at like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's nice to meet you, stuff. Guy's there. I take my Strat and I take the Les Paul that I'd used on the recording. And obviously his studio is absolutely immaculate and amazing. Mm-hmm. So get put in a booth with headphones, and there's a Kemper there, or there's his touring amps that he used on every street tour, actually. So that was the last time he officially used amps.
Yeah, okay.
There's a Tonk in there, there's a couple of Fenders and stuff. And his guitar tech is there as well. And he's like, you can use whatever you like, really, whether you like the amps or the Kempers. And I'm super nervous. I'm like, I'll just plug into anything. Show me a piece of music first. Let me have a look at the notes. It's my mindset again. A tone comes last.
Yeah.
So I went for the Kemper anyway, and all his profiles in there. I was like, man, I wish I'd had these before I sent the audition. All the amps are laid out for you that you can see. Yeah. Everything's there, and of course it just sounds perfect straight away.
Yeah.
And then we go into the control room, and he's already recorded the song with him playing guitar on it. Right. All the lead lines and stuff are there, and so he plays the track to us, and they give us like a lead sheet with kind of the rough lead parts written out, and there's a rhythm guitar part as well. And this is really bad. I've forgotten the name of the other guitarist, but it's one of his touring guitarists.
Right.
It wasn't the other guitarist that's going to be on the show. And we listened to the track, and the other guy says to me, so you take the lead stuff, Lewis, and I'll do the rhythm stuff. I was like, okay, cool, fine. So then we go into the separate booths, and Mark played each lick down the line to my headphones, and then you'd have to play it back to him.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a big long opening lick that he played to you, and you had to kind of learn it on the spot, play it back.
God.
There's a rough written outline of it. Yeah, I know. Mental, isn't it? Absolutely mental. It's one of the most stressful days of my life, but equally one of the most amazing.
Yeah. Well, often the two things go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, I say stressful. He didn't make it stressful at all, actually.
No.
That's the good thing. There was no attitude with him or anything. He was super nice. And
I think often when you get people like that, they kind of got so much self-confidence that they don't need to do any of that business. They're just sort of like, they are who they are. They've made a career out of being themselves. Yeah. They're not going to start pushing people around there. I think sometimes more of that attitude stuff can happen like lower down the pecking order, actually.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, don't get me wrong. He knew exactly what he wanted.
Oh, God, yeah.
And if you played something that wasn't fitting, then he'd tell you. But, there's ways of going about it, and he was super cool about it. So, yeah, that was that. And here's the other weird thing. We spent 2 whole days from like 9 till 6 recording one song. Mm-hmm. Where do you hear about that nowadays in any recording studio?
Yeah, well,
I've done cast recordings in 2 days. You know what I mean? One song over 2 days is an absolute joy, really.
Yeah.
Well, into that finer detail of parts and
that's something we don't get the luxury of. It's like I've been watching some of those Lee Sklar to camera YouTube videos that he's been doing, and he talks about the fact that in the old days they had the time and the budgets to spend, ages getting it just right. Yeah, and now it's all about, right, come on,
Yeah. it was that, yeah. So we played through it a couple of times, and then one time he's like, okay, let's go for a take. Later on the first day in the afternoon, so we went for a take, and that was it. That was the keeper, like recorded live.
Yeah.
You know, there and then, and that was it. I did, funny enough, went in the next day and did one overdub of one note. That was all I played second day.
Oh God, it's amazing. That makes me feel...
There's a funny moment, I must tell you. The guitarists will appreciate this. Where was it now? Let me just remember the part. Yeah, there's that little there's one of these little sixth movements parts in there, and I played it there, and he was listening back in the control room, and he had his red Fender there that we've all seen before, and he's listening back to my part, and he's like, where did you play that part? And I was like, I was there. And he's like, yeah, he said it would have sounded loads better there. That's where I would have done it. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. These quality little snippet moments coming out, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there you go. But I mean, he's got, not only does he have years of guitar playing and songwriting experience, he's got years of production experience and working in studios. So he knows, he probably has a very good ear for the overview.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think in itself is a skill.
Yeah.
You know, when you're producing yourself, to be able to do that is really difficult. I mean, I found that, you know, doing my own stuff, you know, with my albums and any other stuff that I've been doing at home that's my own stuff, it's really hard to make those objective decisions about things.
Yeah. And he's super critical about himself as well, was the other interesting thing. He was really nervous about the show and it being people liking the music and, you know, is this a good opening number? He was really questioning every little fine detail. And this 2 days spent on one track was just like a demo track for the cast to be rehearsing to, you know. And the second day we spent most of the time doing backing vocals for the track. So that was an experience as well. Yeah, it's very cool. And like when there was a bit of downtime just in the control room, he was just chatting to me about stuff and what you said at the start actually about him. He's all about the music. He doesn't consider himself a great guitarist. You know, I think he appreciates that he's a good songwriter by his own admission, and it's always been about the song for him, and that's his main focus. He's not particularly impressed with his own guitar playing. And he said that's why he hired us to come in and record this track, bizarrely enough. Because he wanted it pinpoint accurate for the show recording. You know, so...
That's interesting.
There's a lot about the man, really, that he's willing to hand it over. And
I always used to notice whenever I saw him playing live in the 80s on stadium gigs like the big charity, you know, Live Aid or the Mandela thing or whatever. And I always thought that his right hand looked like it was shaking with nerves slightly. Did you ever clock that?
Possibly, yeah.
If you check any footage, close-ups of his hand, you can see he's a bit nervy.
He's a bit nervy, yeah. He probably was. Some of those audiences were huge, weren't
they? Yeah, exactly.
Probably was pretty nervous. Yeah, it was mad. I was just sitting there and he was telling me stories about Brecker and stuff, and I was thinking, man, you know, if I could have told my 16-year-old self that I'd be sat in a control room with Knopfler telling me stories about the days of recording with Brecker and this, it was pretty unbelievable couple of days. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, his sort of musical heritage is like cross borders, and he's, you know, he's important in his own right, but he's worked with some super important people over the years, you know, over in America as well as over here, and because he's done the thing with James Taylor, and he's all the New York sessioners who played on Brothers in Arms, you know, Omar Hakim, both the Brecker brothers. Of course, he was on Time Out of Mind as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's worked with everyone, hasn't he? It's crazy. And what's the other thing? he's talking about that tune, Local Hero, and he was saying there's one bit that always makes him nervous about that song. He's like, it's the slide up onto the main theme. That start there.
Okay.
He kept on saying to me, he kept repeating this, and I'd never had a problem with that, right?
Yeah.
And he kept saying to me, he's like, Lewis, you cannot get that wrong on the show. That's like, okay, I wasn't intending to, but I was like, okay. He's like, you cannot go, too far or too short. He's like, you've got to get that. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. I never had a problem with it then, but I do now.
Now you've mentioned it. And he's like, and he said to me, he said, some nights if I'm nervous, he said, I won't start from here. He said, I'll go from here. So I think you're right about the whole nerves thing. He clearly still doesn't worry about that kind of stuff. That's quite funny.
I don't think you become a good artist if you don't get nervous or care about these details, though. That's the fact of the matter, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And the other thing I'd never clocked until he played in front of me was obviously the whole right-hand thing, but how close he actually plays towards the bridge.
Yeah.
Which is, I'd never really thought about that. I thought sort of about that area, but it's actually quite far back here. Which gives that kind of brighter sound. So another thing I'd wish I'd taken a bit more notes of before, but yeah, all this stuff, until you sit in front of the man, you wouldn't ever have noticed. So yeah, it was really cool. It was a cool couple of days.
Yeah, brilliant. So obviously there was supposed to be a show. When was that supposed to have opened?
Yeah, we should have been up and running now. So earlier this month, and then press night would have been the 30th. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was still a little bit of hope when we first got the news of this whole pandemic.
Is it likely to come back in any form at some point, do you think?
I think it will. I think there's call for it. The producers are hopeful it'll come back. Mm-hmm. I've had a couple of texts from Guy saying that he thinks it will come back because it was successful in Scotland when they run it up there. So yeah, I think the show has got an audience waiting for it, but as we know, it's whether the theatres
are even going to be there.
Yeah, well, somewhere, because it was going into the old Vic.
Yeah.
And so I think they're probably one of the theatres that are probably struggling.
I think they are. They were one of the first ones that sort of were making headlines that were struggling, isn't it? So, yeah, well, dark times as far as the business is concerned, but yeah, it's there's not a lot we can do about it at the moment, apart from sit tight and try.
One of the frustrating things, isn't it? It's completely out of your power, and there's nothing you can.
It's like one of the things that dawned on me a while back was the fact, normally when you're short of work, you think, oh man, I better just start hustling. You phone a few people up and say, oh look, I'm looking for work, any depping work, got any gigs going, whatever. You can't even do that because there isn't any work. So you can't do the usual thing you would do to generate work for yourself.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but the whole online session thing is very sparse, isn't it?
Oh God, I mean, I've done actually quite a lot of online recording for a couple of different projects, but neither of them are going to pay me any money, certainly immediately. Or if they do, there's a load of library stuff I've been doing for somebody, and I've done stuff for him on and off for years, and I've only ever been in on a PRS cut. And if that music never gets bought up, you don't get paid for it. Now, if one of the tunes that we've been working on recently gets bought up, then I'll get some money from it. But I might very well and probably won't get any money for it at all. So I've been super busy with that kind of thing and a couple of projects. But none of them are going to keep the business afloat, as it were. So.
And there's a lot of certain websites that you see. There's a lot of undercutting, obviously, starting to go on, and people offering to record tracks for crazy low money. Yeah. And I think it's just opening a whole new door.
It is. I'd seen something about that on Facebook, and I hadn't really seen it or clocked it. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I got asked to do a guitar part a number of weeks ago by somebody I know quite well. I did quite a lot of work through him, just for like, you know, mainly sort of cruise ship backing stuff. But it was like a singing group wanted a track done for their repertoire, and he was like, how much would you do it for? And I said, well, you know, normally it would be this much, you know, going by the MU guidance and stuff like that. And I said, but I'm sort of open to negotiation. And it was like, oh, you know, they definitely won't go for that because they haven't got any work until. And I managed to inadvertently, I said, well, you know, I'm open for negotiation, but it never. That was the last I heard of it. It's almost like, well, if I'd have gone in and said I'd do it for 40 quid,
yeah,
what precedent does that set?
No, totally.
Not a very good one. I mean, I understand that everybody is going to have to pull their prices down. I don't dispute that for 1 minute, but it's a question of how cheap do you go before you start selling out, basically, and totally devaluing what it is that we do.
Yeah. And also, on the grand scheme of things, I don't know about your situation, where's that 40 quid going to go that you make on that?
Not very far. It's half a week's shopping bill, isn't it, really, for a family?
Yeah. Do you think, why am I even bothering to spend my time?
Yeah, because I'm undoubtedly going to spend like more than 3 hours trying to get it to sound good. Yeah. You know, I'll record it and then I'll re-record it and I'll probably do multiple takes and edit it together to get it as good as possible. Maybe a bit of post-production on it, and before you know where you are, you know,
half your day gone, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So I don't really know what the future holds at the minute, but just fingers crossed that some good news comes eventually for our industry.
We'll kind of just sort of wrap it up there, I think.
Yeah, man.
So as far as the interview is concerned, thanks for taking the time to do this, and hopefully we'll see local hero in a theatre one day soon.
We'll make a return, yeah. But yeah, if it doesn't, you know, I was saying to someone else the other day, I could quite happily go to my grave knowing that I spent 2 days in the studio with the man himself. So yeah, for me, on a personal level, it's not all too bad.
That's great. I mean, yeah. All right, dude. Well, thanks so much, man. And we will reconvene at some point in the future.
I hope so.
Take care of yourself.
Thanks for the interview. Take care.
Yeah, man.
See you soon,
Cheers.
mate.
Bye.
Bye.